Okay, Norma, how are you?
Well, thanks, Charlie.
Good.
Yes, yes.
I believe we're going to talk about Blaxland, Wentworth and Lawson this morning.
That's right, yes.
Excellent. I'll leave it to you.
All right then. Just at this time, 190 years ago, they were braving the elements, trying to find a passage across the Blue Mountains. They left, Gregory Blaxland had been given a land grant at South Creek, just south of the Mamre property. They left there on the 11th of May 1813 to try to find a passage across the mountains. They were actually looking for more grazing land because the early colony was growing. There was not enough land for grazing. So Blaxland had been on 2 earlier expeditions, but they were thwarted. They followed rivers and gullies, and then they'd come up against a rock face that they couldn't climb. So Blaxland had the idea that if they followed the ridges, they stood a better chance of finding a passage through.
So that's where the name of the suburb Blaxland came from?
Yes, yes.
Some days they had no road maps, eh?
No, no. The only people that knew their way around in the Blue Mountains were the Aboriginals that lived there. And they actually stalked the expedition most of the way, just keeping an eye on them to see what they were doing. But this Gregory Blaxland, along with William Charles Wentworth, who had land in the roughly Orchard Hills area, and William Lawson from Veterans Hall at Prospect, where the Prospect Reservoir is now.
All right.
Lawson rode his horse overland to Blaxland's farm, which was called Lee Home. And that was, where the canine centre is now?
That's right, yeah.
Yes, well, all that land, both sides of Ludnam Road, and down over South Creek and up towards Orchard Hills, Gregory Blaxland.
I could have never survived them days because I don't know how to ride the horse. I had to go on foot wherever.
I don't think I'd do too well either. But they left Lee Home with 4 servants, or convicts, 5 dogs and 4 pack horses. They called at the Mamre homestead to get further supplies, and although the big homestead that's there now wasn't there then, there'd have been just small farm buildings there then, and they headed off through the bush. Now the undergrowth was so thick heading across the mountains that there were times they had to leave the horses and they'd go ahead and cut a way through the undergrowth, come back and take the horses through. It was just so thick. Because they were a bit frightened, they'd become lost in all this dense undergrowth, so they marked the trees as they went so they could find their way back.
That's what we used to do when we were kids. You go and discover something, tie a rope somewhere, or mark it with paint and go in and
find your way back again.
Find your way back again.
Well, they had all sorts of problems on the way, and it was even difficult to find grass for the horses to eat.
All right.
So because of just all this thick undergrowth, when they came to a little bit of a clearing where there was some grass, they naturally fed the horses and they cut grass and carried it with them just to make sure that the horses would have enough food till they could find some more.
What about, I suppose, in them days there was more kangaroos running around and snakes by the thousands?
Yeah.
That must have been
yes, it would have been a very difficult time for them. But William Lawson, he had trained as a surveyor in his younger days, so he was probably responsible for charting the way and keeping a track of just the directions they were travelling and so on. Blaxland was strictly a farmer, and he was just interested in finding land to take all his cattle across there. But they found their way, and surprisingly, it only took them 3 weeks.
Jeez,
and they came they didn't go right across the mountain. They went to a place that became known as Mount Blaxland, but from there they could see the plains across to Bathurst. And so they knew that there was grazing land there. So then they returned, but it only took them 5 days to come back because they followed the marked trees.
Oh, yeah.
But they arrived back on the 5th of June. They crossed the Nepean River and then returned to their own homes from there.
So how did they cross the river, Norma?
Well, in those days there wouldn't have been the amount of water in the river that's there now,
right.
because there was no weir,
Right.
you know, and they'd swim the horses across. So just at Emu Plains, there was what they called the Emu Plains Ford. Was very rocky there, and the water was shallow, so they were able to cross there all right.
Is it where the rowing club is, a bit further down from the rowing club, is it?
No, near where the Log Cabin Hotel is.
All right.
There's still evidence there of where the later road went.
All right.
But while Blacks and Wentworth and Lawson followed the ridges through the mountains, there were times they'd have to climb down the mountains to little creeks to get water and then climb back up to the ridge to continue on. And then later, when they built the road, the first a track across the mountains, they followed the path. And even now, if you fly across the Blue Mountains, you can see where the roadway follows the ridges right through, so it's almost exactly where they crossed. They all served their communities well. When they came back, they contributed quite a lot to the community. Blaxland, he went on to become a farmer of note with all of, he had a big farm over near Eastwood called Brush Farm, and because he had the one here at South Creek, and he actually took the first cattle across the Blue Mountains then in 1815, so they already had the roadway done.
Difficult,
Would have been a rough trip in a carriage though, I think. And so he just went on farming for the rest of his life until he died in 1853. But that was just his whole interest in life. Wentworth went on to have a very interesting time. He was the younger of the three. He was only 23 when he crossed the mountains, and so when he came back, he went back to England and studied law in England, and returned again in 1824, and he became the joint publisher of the Australian newspaper. He was responsible for abolishing this trial by the military, because in those days the military were the law. So if you did anything wrong, it was there was they had the say over the
still like that in
courts
certain
and
places.
all. It is. But he had that abolished and introduced trial by jury, which was a lot fairer, and was the system that we use to today. And he also served on the Legislative Council, and he was instrumental in establishing the first sort of system of primary education, state education in New South Wales.
Well, what age was he when he passed on?
Oh, he was about 82.
Wow.
And he also helped establish the Sydney University.
Oh, right.
So, he was very involved in the whole early life in Sydney. But years ago the ABC made a very interesting series that he featured in. You know, it was more or less the story of the early settlement, but he played a major part in that. And William Lawson, he came back to Prospect. He was actually a lieutenant with the Army and with the New South Wales Corps. He came back to Prospect to Veterans Hall and farmed that area. He made several other trips over the mountains and took naturalists and botanists across the ranges to study the all the plant life there, and made the first discovery of coal at Hartley Vale. And he also became a member of the Legislative Council of New South Wales. So,
very interesting
times. And to think that it all started from here at South Creek.
That's right. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, a lot of people don't know much about St. Mary's history, and with your help, Norma, you are sort of informing them and letting them know exactly what's happened them days, and especially these names, where the names of the suburbs came from, and names of the streets and all that.
Well, we've got Blaxland, Lawson and Wentworth Falls, all towns in the Blue Mountains that have been named
I assume
after
Henry Lawson Club is mentioned after Lawson too.
Oh no, that's was Henry Lawson, the poet.
All right, it's a different.
Yeah, different Lawson.
Well, there's Lawson, the suburb up in the mountains.
Well, that's named after William Lawson. Yeah, Lieutenant William Lawson.
Excellent.
So, but anyone that's interested in learning more about these people, if they would like to come along to the St Mary's and District Historical Society.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Also, with your society, if people can people join your society?
Oh yes.
Members?
Oh, we welcome new members all the time.
Well,
yes.
Can you tell us a bit about it, and how can they contact you?
They can ring me on 9623 2307. I'm in the phone book, Norma Thorburn, and we have meetings on the 4th Saturday of each month at the Community Arts Centre, just near the lights there on Mamre Road. And we have our business meeting, and then we have afternoon tea, and then we have a workshop where we all talk about the history, and we, do some research.
How often do you meet, Norma?
Once a month.
Once a month. Is it weekdays, I assume?
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon,
yes,
which is very convenient for everyone.
4th Saturday.
4th Saturday.
Last month we had a lovely tour on the Saturday morning. We all went out to Glenlee, the historic home on the river at Regentville, and we had a tour of the home out there, and then came back and had our meeting and our workshop, so we made a whole day of it.
Very well. And does it cost them any money to join your association?
It's $5.
$5 for 12 months. So every 12 months they have to pay $5, which is what's $5 a day?
Yeah, well, it doesn't buy you much these days, but
spend that in
but it can open up the door to a lot of great local history.
Excellent. There you are. So if you're interested in local history, call Norma. She's the president of the association on 96232307. What can I say, Norma? Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you, Charlie.
And we'll meet you another 4 weeks or
see you next
whatever.
Month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
That was Norma Thorburn, the president of St. Mary's District Historical Society. We'll catch up with you later.